What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. And holy shit, where do we start? The Brazilian Grand Prix, I think last week I started off by asking you guys to choose one word to describe the race. And I feel like if we can do the same thing for this race, sky's the limit. We can do absolutely anything.
It's lights out and away we go.
So Drew, one word for Brazilian Grand Prix. Start us off.
Bewilderment.
I think you mean bewildered in this tense, but no. All right, please tell us more.
Oh, I didn't know. I don't have to elaborate. I didn't know it was going to be a test.
Oh, you're just throwing out random words? Okay.
Yeah. You just said one
bewildered. I know, but then you should elaborate. It's a podcast. People come to hear you talk.
You know what? The weekend was a dumpster fire from start to finish. I thought the sprint was it was whatever. People were cheesed about how things were going. The qualities were a lot messed up. Start to finish, there was nothing that went off without a hitch. There was a hitch in every possible scenario. You got some big winners, come from behind winners, and you have epic losers, Williams. And people, I don't know if the internet has decided about what to make of this race yet. I think we're just going to chalk it up as one of those, I don't know, it is what it is kind of races. But it was a Brazilian Grand Prix, baby. Points count where points count.
Ed, what do you got? Give me your word. Give me your word of the day.
One word. Clusterfuck.
I think you did this last week.
No,
it was Thomas that did it last week. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a hyphen in there, I'm guessing. Okay, carry on. Yes. Clusterfuck.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, the winner wasn't Max Verstappen. The winner was Interlagos because he clipped everyone, destroyed everyone on the track. So the track won. Made everyone spin, made everyone hit the wall. Yeah, that was.
I see what you mean. Okay,
yes.
I got it. It just dominated everybody.
Yep.
Thomas, how many words are we getting today? I asked for one. What are you going to give us?
Fire. All right.
Look at you.
Okay.
Look at you. Following instructions.
Look at
fire,
this. Eh?
And not because it was raining, but because it was actual fire of a race. You know, what Drew and what Edward said, from crashes to red flags to safety cars to accidents to surprise results, just insane. So fire race. You know what, my word, I have two words here. I'm not sure which one to go with. I think messy kind of sums up a lot of what went on and echoes kind of your thoughts. And then the obvious one is just wet. It was just wet all the time. It was soaking. It was very moist. Thank you.
That's what she said.
It's extremely, extremely moist everywhere. Did you guys see the videos? You saw the video of the stands, the grandstands, and just
which one, the waterfall or
water?
The guys
yeah.
Slide?
The waterfall going down there.
Yeah.
That was insane. I thought the rain was bad in Montreal when I was there. I was like, "Oh shit, man, we were coasting compared to what these guys were dealing with." So, way to go to the fans for sticking around. But the drivers had a weekend, and let's not forget this was a sprint weekend as well. Show of hands, does anyone actually know and remember what happened in the sprint?
McLaren dominated.
Because it seems like a very much of a secondary story comparatively to what happened in the race. Take us through the sprint, Drew, because honestly, man, my recollection of the sprint is minimal at this point.
The reason why we don't remember it is because it was exactly what we expected to happen. And it was we had McLaren out in front looking just as tip-top form as they have in the last few races, and they were competitive, looking like Lando and Oscar were doing exactly what they needed to do in order to win. And, they did the old switcheroo. in order for Lando to get the points, but Oscar had that car dialed in the dry, obviously. I'm pretty sure McLaren went with a different medium force downforce wing. I don't remember if that was for the race or for the sprint, but yeah, it was, you know, what we expected. And compared to what the race was, it was inconsequential because the race was such a disaster straight from qualies onwards. And, you know, this was the first time I can remember that qualies got pushed. I know it has been pushed before until Sunday, but I didn't remember the last time that happened exactly. So yeah, it was what it was going to be, but it was not indicative of the results on Sunday, though. That's for sure.
Not all. Completely different conditions, completely different results. We saw a completely different level of dominance throughout the race as well. Ed, talk us through a little bit what you saw on Sunday before we get into like all the mess that led up to it.
I was very disappointed on how McLaren responded to.
You would be.
Yeah, I would.
Does not serve your cause very well.
No, it does not. It does not at all. But you know what? I'm gonna stand on still, even if the numbers, the math doesn't do any justice. I still want to believe, and I'm still rooting for McLaren to take everything away. Maybe at this point, realistically speaking, we are looking at the championship for constructors for them, and maybe Max taking it all away now. But I'm still rooting for Lando for this, and I'll talk a little bit more about the math on that end, specifically on the next race, because that's going to be the clincher at this point on the drivers' championship. But on the other side of it, like I was super impressed with how Max just like took on the race, took on every single thing that was thrown at him this weekend. And shout out to the guys in the Discord. It was very heated in the Discord discussions, but yeah, massive respect to Max this weekend, because out of everything, like he came away with the win. I mean,
From 17.
everything was thrown at him, including the kitchen sink. Like, what else can you ask for from a race and from a driver? Just like heads down and let's go.
This race, if we thought last race was in the textbook, then I don't even know. This race is straight to the moon, you know? So much events. I think this race is going to be talked about for a very, very long time. Kudos to Max. He kept his head down, and to pull off such an amazing result from 17th, I believe, to first and finishing almost like 20 seconds ahead, just mind blown. But there's also a team I was specifically very disappointed and was kind of, rooting for at least that they would finish in the points, but that didn't really happen. I was hoping Kick Sauber would actually, finish 10th to get that single point. Perfect opportunity. They had both cars, so many people out, and they still couldn't manage that. So that was very disappointing to see it on my end. But overall, shit show race in a very entertaining way, I guess. That's how I would put it.
So as Drew mentioned, sprint was kind of as expected. McLaren up top. Obviously, we get into qualifying, and that's canceled because of the weather. And now we're in a Sunday where you have an early quali, you have a race. What was it? 3 hours later, something like that. What a crazy predicament for the drivers, mechanics, everybody like that. Qualifying was a mess. You had everyone going off everywhere. Williams, what like a heartbreaking weekend for Williams. You talk about Kick Sauber that had a chance to score some points and maybe make a move. Like they had, I feel like Williams was probably one of the biggest losers of the weekend, given the fact that both drivers crashing the cars, not able to put anyone on the grid. like again, we talked about this a little bit before we started, but it's like, where do you start with this race? You have the warm-up lap. All right. Lance like loses it, then drives himself into a sand pit and aborts the start. Like everything nothing went to plan this race, and somehow we got a pretty incredible performance out of Max. At least, do we want to talk about qualifying? Because again, it was like every man for like it just seemed like I don't even have the words for it. Someone help me out here. Someone
Let's
say
break
something
it down. Let's
logical.
break this episode down to let's start with the biggest winners, and then we'll go to the biggest losers because there's
go.
teams. There's teams, and then there's individual drivers. But I think if we start off for the biggest winner of the weekend is Max Verstappen. Let's call that a spade a spade. And much to Ed's point, shout out to the guys in the Discord because we were yapping about it all weekend. It feels like the FIA has ganged up against Red Bull and Max Verstappen, and I don't know if it's a play with Liberty Media to try to bring the Drivers' Championship closer together because they want this going into the final race and everyone being excited and this whole thing being talked about. But it seems like they could not throw enough shit against Red Bull and get it to stick because Max was able to take a grid penalty, an engine penalty, a whatever penalty, a we don't like your list penalty, all these penalties. And he took it and fueled his fire because you know what? When qualifying was happened, and I think it was Colapinto, I can't remember who put it in the wall or whatever when Max had to, or it was Albon, when Max wasn't able to finish that final lap. And they waited 40 seconds. And I saw a breakdown of this and like the math kind of mathed a little bit, but like they literally let 4 or 5 drivers finish their lap without having to be double yellow flagged or the red flag happen. So they were like essentially doing to Max what they did to Max and Hamilton 2021 Abu Dhabi. Because they allowed certain guys to finish and then they didn't allow other guys to finish. And they were obviously trying to hold, but like Max started 17th place and all the stuff that was being held against him, he was like, you know what? Whatever, guys. Who cares? Put the tires on the car, fill up the gas. Let's go. I'm going to light you guys up. And he did. He drove like a man on a mission. And when you got Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso reaching out to you on socials being like, bro, that was a drive. Like, because these guys were just trying to keep their car on the track. This guy was racing. And everybody else was trying not to die. And, I don't know if you guys play video games with people, but like, when you got the guy who's really good at something, and then you got the guy who's mashing buttons. This guy was just like, it was a masterclass. And I'm not the biggest Max fan. I think he's an absolute D-bag on his best day. But the guy's a driver, dude. And you got to give it up to him. And I think Max Verstappen and I guess thus Red Bull were the biggest winners, in my opinion, on the weekend. Can
I stop you there for a second? Because you talked about
I don't think I have a choice.
No, you don't. You talked about the FIA and you talked about like the, I think what you put it in terms of the collusion against Red Bull and Max to make it interesting. Is that just fun to talk about, or does anyone actually buy into that? Ed?
Yeah, I would. Like, I'm buying into that 100%. Like,
you're all into conspiracy theories. You're like, into it. Okay?
No, it's not even a conspiracy. Like, at the end of the day, I've talked about this how many times in all of our episodes that this is all about a business at the end of the day. They want ratings, they want drama, they want everyone to be talking about this. They want everyone to be like having discussions, debates, and whatnot. At the end of the day, Liberty Media, FIA, and the entire business of Formula One is the winner of this. So if they have to skate the rules a little bit like everyone else to create a little bit of drama, to create a little bit more headlines and discussion points, like what we're doing right now in a podcast, that's it. Like, I am all for it. But again, and I want to bolster even more what Drew has said, that the Red Bull literally and Max Verstappen both, they just took it on the chin and just kept going. No complaints, no nothing. The same way Hamilton took it. I won't say like what do you call this? Toto Wolff did the exact same as like keeping quiet, hunkering down, just going for it. As we all know, no, Michael, no, on the radio in 2021. But it was a different story, different masterclass about Red Bull and Max. Just like, we don't care, throw everything at us. I'm gonna take this race. So I said it even before the race. Derek in the Discord, I told him that watch Max come back. If the 20-second penalty from Mexico didn't deter him, nothing will. And even this clusterfuck of a race and everything that the FIA threw at him, nothing. He still won the race. So he gets massive respect from me. For me, this is the defining race of Max's career. Nothing else will define it. Not all of his championships. This kind of like erases now the 2021 debacle that happened. Because for me, this is just
This? Hold on.
this
Really?
proves it.
Really?
Hold on.
Yes, it does.
Are you over it then?
What?
That's what you're saying. Is your resentment for the 2021 Abu Dhabi we're back at a wash? You're okay with it?
Well, the thing is, it's both sides of the coin now. Now you have against Max and for Max, 2021, and
So you're
this-
calling it even
and this
Steven
race.
now.
Yeah, this is even Steven at
All
this
right,
point.
cool. I don't wanna hear
Everything
about
is
it
being
again,
thrown at him.
I don't want to hear about it
Right.
anymore then. We're over
All
it.
right.
You know what? I
Thomas.
misspoke before we get on here. I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
misspoke. I did say that Red Bull was the biggest winner this weekend and Max Verstappen. That was a wild lie. Alpine was the biggest winner. Alpine was
Yes.
definitely the biggest winner.
Yes,
They jumped
I
from
agree.
second last to sixth in the constructors with all those points and gained like $55 million in funding, well needed funding. Those two are the biggest winners. We'll get into that. I misspoke, so I have to clarify that.
No worries. We'll get into why they got there. But Thomas.
Yeah, so in regards, do I think this is a conspiracy against Max? Yeah, I think there was too many coincidences for it to not be a conspiracy. Ted's points, to Drew points, money talks, and they wanted to drum up some excitement, and for sure they ended up doing that because everyone's talking about it. You don't even really have to be a Formula One fan. I had some people reach out to me that don't even watch Formula One. They're like, what happened at the Brazil GP? Like, they heard something about it, right? And it's like, buddy, there's just it was a shit show. Go watch the highlights. So yeah, it's what Red Bull were able to achieve. Phenomenal. Masterclass. To Drew's point, Alpine, another great team. Hopefully they hang on to that, what is it, number 6 spot, because if they don't, that 55 mil might be gone. So there's still a couple of races for that. So also looking forward to the next couple of races to see where the playing field is going to be with all the teams.
I think you're all absolutely crazy. I do not think there's any collusion against Max or Red Bull. I think the best proof of the fact that there is no collusion against Max and Red Bull is the fact that he got handed a free pit stop and a couple of positions in this race the same way he did in 2021, Ed, just FYI. He got in on a red flag, free tire change, up the grid, and then he was gone. So I don't buy into, he took the same penalties anyone else would take when they change an engine or whatever. And yeah, I don't buy it. We talked about Alpine and their progress, their race success. Part of that was due to the red flag. We had the teams come in. Obviously, Lando and George had just pitted, a few laps earlier to get those fresh tires on. Let's talk about the red flag. Let's talk about everyone coming in. Let's talk about the rule. We talked about it a little bit in the Discord. Let's talk about the rule where everyone basically just gets a free pit stop, free tire change on that red flag. Because we've seen it now, obviously more than once, but we talked, bringing up 2021, that's a great example. This race in Brazil, another great example. Lots of implications on the championship. And personally, I don't love it. I don't love that anyone that just waits long enough gets a free pass. What do you guys think?
Listen, I think you're 100% right on this because it allows the people who have less to lose to make that choice to stay out. And, I saw Lando in a post-race interview and he says, everybody who doesn't benefit from this hates the rule and everybody who benefits from it loves the rule. But that changes race to race. So it's one of those scenarios where, when you are Lando Norris and George Russell and you have something to lose by losing points here, and then you have, somebody like Max Verstappen who's, just trying to clinch whatever he needs to. He has less to lose in this scenario here, at least at that point in the time, and especially in the Brazilian Grand Prix. They could just stay out for longer. And like Alpine literally has nothing to lose. And so they could just stay out there as long as they wanted and wait for that red flag because it was inevitable. Where somebody like Mercedes, who plays it safe on the regular, and someone like McLaren, who's gunning for the top spot, they have something to lose. So they got to play that safer card. And I think that, it allows the people who, it's exactly it. I don't know. There's no other way to say it. Like whoever doesn't have anything to lose can just take that risk. And I think it's dumb because, there's a lot of people that make strategy calls based on what they think or predicting is going to happen. I guess you could flip the coin either way on that one because you could say it the other way. But I just think that getting a free pit stop under a full red flag is a little bit cheesy. I think under safety car, everyone understands that you get like, a half point or halftime on the safety car, but you still have to come back in and out in a lower drop spot on the grid, or at least 12 to 20 seconds behind or whatever it is at that track. But you have something like a red flag and all the cars are in the pit and everyone's just sitting there dilly-dallying and they're all going to go back out in the same order. You literally get a free tire change. So I don't know. I think it's something that needs to be looked at. If they're going to be changing other rules by the end of this year, I think it's something that definitely needs to get looked at.
I don't know. From my end, like, yes, there is some disparity in terms of like being able to switch the tires, but it's even for everyone else. Like it doesn't mean that one set of people that stayed out can get a free tire change and then the other people that did the tire change before the red flag loses the spot. They can't break the race order. They can't break the distance of the drivers or the race distance just because of what do you call this, the red flag. So I mean, I totally understand wherein it now becomes unfair that those that stayed outside get the free tire change and then fresher tires, and then the ones that pit earlier, which now is in the back of the grid. But that's racing too. Like I don't know how else to explain it. Because I just like I understand it that way, and I'd probably want to read the rules even further if there would be any other discrepancies. I'd take that back and get back to you guys on the next episode, or even just like on the Discord too. But I think that it's fair regardless of how it turns out. Just so happens that there's a stop. You can't tell the people that stayed, oh, you can't change the tires, and then the guys that are in the back, they're able to change the tires. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but for me, like, I think it's fair regardless of how other people feel about it.
Yeah, to me personally, it doesn't really make a difference. I see both points of views. I think strategy, it's where it comes into play. As Josette said, you guys both have valid points, but if someone pitted it prior to the red flag and a red flag falls, fair game. I think it should be allowed to change it. It might be also come to a safety issue or just different strategies. But regardless, I think it's fair. It doesn't really bother me for the time being. Again, it kind of can see where, for instance, you, Drew, might have an issue with this, and I do see your point and I understand it, but I don't know if there is, or what the specific workaround around that could be to make it more fair towards everyone, I guess, because you said it yourself. If you pit before, you're screwed. If you pit at red flag, you're kind of winning. So race to race. So I don't know.
I guess my problem with that rule is what is the spirit of the rule trying to accomplish? Like, I understand the written rule and I get it, it's fine, but like, from a competitive standpoint, like, what is the spirit of the rule trying to do? And I don't understand a scenario in which giving teams new equipment without any penalty midway through a race just because of the red flag is fair.
Agreed.
Now, you can say, well, some teams will pit before a yellow flag and then some teams won't, and they'll miss that opportunity. Is that fair? But I think it's different when the race is halted and you bring everyone in and they're in their position. And I just don't understand what it accomplishes from a competition standpoint. So I think that's why we're having an issue reconciling why that rule exists. Maybe after a red flag, they do a couple of laps under the safety car and give teams a chance to pull in, right?
And I think that's fine, because a cheap pit stop is different than a free pit stop.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because you still have to take that penalty, and then like whether or not you decide to stay out, especially if it's raining and it's on inters, like do you stay out anyway and keep track position? I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on. We talked about the big winners. Let's talk about the big losers. There were so many losers. It's just
so many losers.
A field just full of losers. Absolute losers. Drew, pick
We're
your
talking about the
loser.
20 best drivers in the world making millions of dollars a year, driving the sickest cars. Losers.
Losers. Where do we start?
I'm going to start with the biggest losers being Williams this weekend. And not because those drivers are bad or because anything other than I just don't think their car had that track dialed. I don't know if it was the new surface and the bumps and all that stuff, but those guys were magnets for the walls. And, hats off to the team who already has the lowest budget and they're already scrambling. They were scrambling for parts in like April. Like, do you remember Logan Sargent? That was a guy. He raced this year. What an idea, right? That seems like forever ago. And Logan Sargent had to give up his car to Alex Albon because they didn't have another chassis. So like we're already talking about people who did not have excess of anything, and they binned both cars in qualies, and now they had to rebuild everything in a few hours. They were only able to get one car out, which was Colapinto, and unfortunately Albon couldn't even make it to the grid. And then you had our Canadian hero, Lance Stroll, not even making it through the formation lap, also leaving an empty spot much higher up on the grid. And, back to Williams thing, I think they're going to have a huge parts problem coming up in Las Vegas. And I know that they have a couple weeks to get that ready. But I think it's not can we get parts fast enough? It's can we afford to get parts? And that's really too bad because they were on a good roll and Colapinto came in and started making some serious waves, getting some attention. Let's talk about the love that Colapinto was getting in Brazil. Being an Argentinian driver, there were a lot of people who made it there. He spoke very briefly about that and people who were, 2 days in transit to get to this race. And I think that that's absolutely awesome. On a sidebar, do we think Colapinto's going to VCARB?
Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
I think so too. And Mr. Christian Horner was seen leaving the Williams garage a little bit early there. So I think that Colapinto's got a place on the grid in my heart. So and unfortunately, I think Williams is a big loser this weekend, but I'm really excited to see Colapinto on the grid, and I hope that stays true.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I feel bad for Williams. I want to just echo that. It was just like an absolute. It was painful to watch both drivers. But for me, the greatest loser of this weekend was Oscar Piastri in McLaren because, oh my God, And I'm sure Mark Webber was probably this like having a lot of PTSD or trauma from back in his racing days, because it's happening again to Oscar Piastri. He's now taking the second seat, and it's just, yeah, I mean, feel bad for the guy. But then again, that's just for this year. Who knows? Things might change next year for McLaren, and he might start to kind of like bounce back and take it to Lando and be like, "Nah, you're not number one driver anymore." So he's taking it on the chin and trying to just like power through it. But yeah. And the other one is also again Lando. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna feel bad for him or whatnot, because like there's been multiple like mistakes in terms of like decisions on when to pit, when even just like his racecraft this weekend was just like amidst everything that was happening, and he's supposed to be the guy that's taking it to Max Verstappen. He's the one that is the closest one that could fight for the drivers' championship. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still pretty much overwhelmed from this weekend, so I'm still processing everything. But yeah, those are my biggest losers. Even if it's not that obvious, like, yeah, I feel bad for the guys because I'm still rooting for them.
So I have two teams as the biggest losers for me, and one is obviously the Kick Sauber. As I mentioned before, if they had one race where they could score points, this was it. And obviously, given the circumstances, the weather, and everything that played a role, but they still couldn't score points. And I was so disappointed. I was rooting so hard for either Joe or Bottas to get that top 10 or get into at least the 10th place and score 1 point so they would not be without a point. But clearly that didn't happen. And I honestly think they're gonna finish off the season with no points, which is a shame. The other team that I thought did really, really poorly, besides mentioning Colpin and Albon, would be Aston Martin. We kind of touched upon a little bit on Stroll, how he wiped out a formation lap, which is great representation for us Canadians. Amazing. But Alonso was not really better either. He kind of struggled there too with his car, and he went off track a little bit. Lost control. He still finished 14th, but for an Aston Martin, that's pretty embarrassing. Again, I get it. The race was insane. Weather, red flags, yellow flags, safety cars, but I expected a stronger result from them.
I think the biggest loser this weekend was Ed, because his whole Oracle shtick is just falling apart. It's just crumbling, and I know it must be hard for you, buddy. But hang in there. You can still be part of the podcast. You can still be on the podcast even if your predictions don't come true. So Ed had a rough weekend. I think beyond that, we talked about Lant. Everyone touched on Lant. I feel like he was like the first domino. I feel like he was just the first domino to fall, and it just set off a chain reaction of cluster fuckery that we could just no one could recover from. Like, everyone was just a mess. You talked about Alonso. I'm going to talk about Hamilton. Like, no one could get a handle on this track except for Max. Everyone was just a complete disaster. And these are some of the best drivers, as Drew mentioned, in the world. And they were all just a bunch of losers this weekend. And then I'm going to talk about McLaren because they anger me so much. I get so angry when I watch them, even during the sprint race, and trying to flip first and second position to give Lando an extra point. Like, how difficult did they have to make that move? They're doing everything they can not to win. It's like Ed's got a line in Vegas, and they're like betting against him. They're like, all right, how can we like make sure this guy doesn't like make a ton of money off of us? And it's just the team dynamics, the strategy calls, the racing. The race starts, can someone please tell Lando how to launch a car? Because that man gets beat off the line every single time. He cannot hold a position. I don't understand. Max needs to go take him to like the go-kart track and like teach him how to launch a car because he's having a tough time. And I just think if McLaren had any hope at a drivers' championship, that is now gone. And I know they're still up on the constructors' ed, but I don't know. Ferrari's only 30 something points behind. Like it is.
That's right.
It is close, my friend. So
is it still theoretically possible for McLaren to win the championship?
Mathematically possible,
Yeah.
but like
Theoretically, no.
Yeah.
After this weekend, like everything that they went through, I mean, they probably have a lot of trauma going into Las Vegas at this point. And I agree with you, Walker. Like you have no idea how I was watching the entire time. I was like just wincing the entire race. And yeah.
Can we discuss? Sorry,
Go
continue.
ahead.
My bad. I shit the bed.
No, you're good. You're good, man. I was just going to say that I agree with Walker. I am the biggest loser this weekend.
Wow.
I agree. For once. Because it was really painful to watch.
We need to cut that audio. And
Yeah, we're going to make that a meme. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
I don't know if anyone else watched the start replay, but like to your point, Walker, when you watch Lando and George go head to head into that first corner, Lando, I don't know if he missed like 2 or 3 gears, but like George was driving a Formula One car and Lando looked like he was driving a Civic. Like there was nothing behind that car and it didn't even look like it was wheel spin. Like to your point, I think that he just doesn't know how to launch a car. Like that's a real thing.
I like how we're telling him this.
I was just gonna say, I love how we're shit talking how he doesn't know how to launch a Formula car. Like any of us could do better, right?
It's not our job to do better. Our job is to comment on his inability to do that. His job is to be in the top 5 best drivers in the world. I'm doing my job. He should do his fucking job.
Speaking of not being able to drive, we do have footage of Thomas
not being able to drive
on a sim rig. So we'll post that in the Discord. So if anyone wants to see kind of an extension, we'll call you Lando Jr. maybe.
Ooh.
To be fair, okay, that was like my first time on a sim, so just
a lot like prom night, eh, buddy?
A lot of wrong turns,
and there was
just
all over too soon.
A lot of pressure, from Ed having a camera in my face and then essentially live streaming it to you guys because I knew you were gonna shit talk me and I knew we were gonna be here.
Here we are.
Maybe you're the Oracle. Who knows?
Yeah.
Saw this in your future.
What he's not is a driver, that's for sure.
Thank you, Thomas.
Goodness.
Thank you.
Oh, comic relief is just incredible tonight, boys. I appreciate it.
Oh, man. I was expecting it. I was expecting more shots tonight, but yeah.
You're right there. All right, so Brazil done, dusted. See you later. I don't even know how to say goodbye in Brazilian or Portuguese. Anyone?
Nope, I got nothing.
No.
No.
Okay. We got a bye week next week. We need a bit of a break. I was complaining that we had a few weeks in between races, and now I feel like I need a week to just decompress because these have been 3 incredibly intense, eventful races. Austin, Mexico, Brazil did not disappoint, and I feel like this has been some of the best racing we have seen in years in this sport in terms of what's at stake, competitiveness, rookie drivers, older drivers. Like it's had absolutely everything. And now we have Vegas coming up. We'll do a proper preview of Vegas next week. But I think that's going to be a pretty pivotal race in the calendar given where things stand. And lots to look forward to because, as I mentioned, these last few races and this season in general, it looked like Max was going to run away with everything, and it has come together to be some of the best racing I think we've seen in a very, very long time.
It just dawned on me that Vegas just started last year. Like last year was the first race in Vegas, and there was like this whole build up, and then the city of Vegas putting up the blockade so people couldn't see the race from like the sidewalk and the hotels, and it was this whole gong show. Honestly, the Vegas race slapped last year. Like right from Carlos Sainz hitting that little pothole, getting a little underneath the car, you know what I mean? Sparks flying everywhere. That was moist. And from that happening all the way, like when I looked at the track, I don't want to say I'm not speaking for you guys, but I looked at it and was like, this is not going to be an entertaining race in the slightest. Like it's pretty much like a rectangle with a little dink hanging off of it. And it was awesome. There was lots of overtaking. It looked dope because it was at nighttime. Like I got down, like staying up a little late because I'm in my mid-30s now. So like staying up past 9 o'clock at night's like a thriller of a weekend for me. I enjoyed it, man. I thought it was awesome. So yeah, very much looking forward to Vegas next weekend.
I think they're having trouble selling some tickets because I keep getting emails.
They're like $12,000 on average.
They had a promo recently for like the Lewis Hamilton grandstands, and they were selling them for 44% off.
Okay, so now we're at
5,000. No, you know what? It wasn't bad. It was like 700 for the weekend. 700 for 3 days.
That's not bad.
You guys want to go to Vegas?
Tell your friends I'm on my way.
I have family there, so I would be able to just
like why wouldn't you have family there?
All right.
They're everywhere but the Philippines, apparently.
I'm gonna send you guys a note. Maybe we'll make this happen.
All right,
Thomas, can you leave the country? Will they let you in the U.S.?
Of course, I can leave the country.
Okay. Don't show up in those glasses at the airport, though.
Not a look.
No, just for that, I am gonna show up in these glasses in the airport if we are doing this, just for you, Walker.
Are you gonna yell in their face the same way that you're yelling in that mic, or?
Yes.
All right, that's better. Thank you very much.
So much better. Yeah.
All right,
Good luck,
boys.
Drew, on editing on that one.
Oh, this is gonna be a mess, boys.
Just leave it all in. Just leave it all in.
Yeah, leave it all in.
Send it.
Fine.
Wait, so before we kind of like close this, because I was wanting to ask this, and I know we never touched on it. Liam Lawson, past 2 races, he's just been like banging heads with Sergio Perez, and I know this is an obvious answer, but do you think he will still be able to keep a drive with him like banging heads with Sergio Perez and just like trying to go against Marco and also Horner as well? Like,
did you see him let Max by and then not let Checo by? So like, as far as Horner and Marco are concerned, he's perfect. He does what he's told. He understands who the boss is. Max Verstappen's clearly the boss. Max is obviously not going to be around forever. Do they need a Max replacement? Do they always kind of take guys who are a little bit like Max hot-headed? I think he fits the bill.
So if that's the case, do we see next year Checo out? Who's taking the RB seat? Is it Lawson or Colapinto?
I think it'd be Lawson, because I think as long as V-Carb or Red Bull gets that South American money, and like I know Mexico's not South America, but let's call it like Central North America, the Americans gets that American money, and Colapinto gets that Argentinian dollars, bro. He's like an absolute god there. And if you saw the people in Brazil, that place was screaming for Colapinto. So like, I think they're still going to get that American money. And I think it fits the bill. Honestly, like I would heavily consider those options. I obviously don't know what the nitty gritties are on the contracts and stuff like that, but Colapinto's a shoo-in as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about it too. Like, I feel like there's a good chance also that Colapinto might skip Lawson and go directly into RB. That could be a possibility too with the money that he's bringing in, because if Sergio Perez leaves, then there's that big hole that he's going to leave in terms of like funding, and Lawson's not really bringing anything in. So I wanted to get your guys' opinion on that one, but yeah, I see that happening too.
Okay, then let me just follow this up really quickly. We'll go around. What are the chances Sergio has a seat next year?
0.
22.5%.
17.5.
You taking the over on that, Walker?
I'm going 100%. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Ooh.
I think that man is a survivor. If you date back to like the Force India days, everyone thinks he's gone. Everyone thinks he's out of a seat. He puts in a few good performances. He brings in that money, goes to Red Bull. I think that guy is just a survivor. And I would not be surprised. I think Lawson's been a bit of a jerk personally. But I would not be
I'm here
surprised
for
if
it, though.
Sergio retains his seat in Red Bull into next year. How long he'll last, I don't know. But
So
I'm putting
are
my
you
money on
saying
100.
that? So are you saying that in Abu Dhabi, the final race of the season, he's gonna go from back of the grid and win the race?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying he's going to have a seat in Red Bull
Okay, all right.
next
But
year.
you said
I
that
haven't
based on a
seen-
few stellar performances, because I know what you're getting at, Walker, because you think Checo's going to pull something out of the bag. From my humble opinion, I think Checo's been trying to pull something out of the bag and just falling short. I think he's tried to put on the move since the summer break, and just nothing's come out of it.
I mean, he
That's
had
what-
a decent
I agree.
he had a decent sprint race in qualifying. He had a decent weekend in Brazil up until the
So
race.
did Alpine. What does that mean? Just saying.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
We will see.
Time will tell, as they say.
Time will tell. Ed's favorite
Anybody
line.
else?
Time will tell.
Anyone else have anything before we move on? Before we put a ribbon on this thing?
Are we doing it the only way we know how?
There's only
Yes.
one way. I don't even know how.
Okay. Okay. But before
can't
we
even
do
hit-
that,
Yes.
we have to give a shout out to everybody in the Discord.
Yes.
-1. Holla. Holla. We have to just put that out there. If you haven't yet, link will be in the show notes. Jump in the Discord. It's a lot of fun most of the time. Gets a little heated some of the time, but it's F1 all the time. If you want to follow us other places, we're on Instagram, YouTube. I don't know where you're watching or listening to this, but if you can listen or watch, we are there. F1 True North. Let's go.
Here we go.
One last thing, Derek comes from a place of love. I told you so.
My God.
Okay, well, let's get
My
right
God.
into it.
No one's gonna wanna go join Discord like this. A lot of shit talking, saying goodbye to people. Although you're getting big when you have to like kick somebody out. And also, it wouldn't be the internet if there wasn't a little bit of shit talking. So
Yeah, that's true.
comes par for the
That's
course.
true.
Anyways, all right. Time for name that sponsor. That's how we end every episode. I'm going to name some sponsors. You're going to tell me which cars they are on, which teams they sponsor, and what that company does. As we know, the scores are fairly set in stone. We don't have that many weeks left, but we have Drew in first place at 22. We have Thomas in third with 9 points, and then we have Ed sitting in the middle with 14. Let's go. First one is Immersive Labs. Immersive Labs.
I am going to say Alpine and IT company, accounting IT company.
Okay.
I'll go next. Williams Pharmaceutical Company.
Immersive Labs is on Alpine, and they are cybersecurity.
Drew, you just pull that one out of the bag? Or did you know? No. Cybersecurity. Well done. On McLaren.
And they are on McLaren.
Cybersecurity was a good guess, though. Well done. Everyone else got a 0. Number 2 is Perkin Elmer. Perkin Elmer. Elmer with an E.
I am going to say Haas Investment Company.
Kick Sauber Shipping Company. Logistics.
Drew?
They are on Alpine, and they are some sort of like they're like a science company that does testing for, like, if you have to, what's it called, do like testing for a vaccine or something like that. They do like they host the test for it.
All right.
That's very specific.
That is very specific. You almost sound like you know what you're talking about. Perkin Elmer, they make precision optics.
Damn it.
Precision optics. But they are an Alpine. 2 points. 1 extra point for Drew. 2 for the day.
Jeez. You guys should watch him on YouTube. And anyone's listening, that face was
weird.
just...
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
very animated character on the best day, so.
Okay. Last one is Morelli.
McLaren and fashion design company.
Can you spell Morelli, please?
Marelli.
It's said more like Morelli.
Williams. I would say they make automotive parts, specifically gauges. Auto gauges.
So specific. If that's not the answer, buddy, that's crazy. I'm going to go with Ferrari because they're Italian. Why not? And let's go with, I think they're a manufacturer of large machines.
All right. Ed should have just stopped at like automotive parts, but I think we'll still give it to him, even though it's not gauges. They are in the automotive manufacturing.
Yeah, Magnet Morelli, right? Magnet Morelli?
I have no idea. I just see Morelli.
Yeah.
It was just Morelli. But they focus on the innovation and digitalization of technology as it relates to automobiles or something like that. So, you know what, Ed, I'm going to give you that point.
Yeah.
We'll give it to Ed. And it's steak.
Because
Steak
they
Sauber.
were at Alfa Romeo. So I'm sure they just stuck around.
They were Alfa Romeo. Well, I'm sure they won't stick around for long.
Not like this.
Not like this. So, to recap our scores, we have Drew with 24, picking up 2 points today. Ed's picking up 1 point, brings him up to 15. And Thomas staying steady with the goose egg at 9. At least you're consistent. There are a couple of weeks where you got like 2 points, and it was just kind of scaring me.
Way.
Yeah.
No, consistent is consistent.
What happens when you start picking Lithuanian gas station sponsors? He knows this Lithuanian gas station is like the back of his hand.
You know what? I'm going to bring up Oren one more time before the season ends just to give you a bone, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. All right, everybody. Boys, that was fun. Thanks for the chat. This has been Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. We'll be back next week. Looking forward to Vegas. Until then, ciao for now.
It's lights out and away we go.